My family was always my priority, and I gave them half of my paycheck every month. But then my mother demanded that I cancel my wedding to save the family business, a business that my brother had ruined with his reckless spending. When I refused, she hit me hard across the face and everything became dark as I stumbled back, hitting the wall behind me. My name is Linda, and I've been the one who has been responsible for keeping my family together for as long as I can remember and dependable daughter. I've always been there to provide, to support, and to give more of myself than I ever got back. I work as a project manager now, and while I've built a successful career that pays well, it often feels like my life isn't my own. Since working full-time, I have given my parents nearly half of my monthly income to ensure they can survive comfortably. Frank, my younger brother, has always been the favorite child. Despite being 5 years younger than me, Frank always got the best of everything, the praise and the attention. I was the rational one, the reliable one who would do whatever needed to be done, even if he was constantly complimented and showered with love and affection. In the hopes that my parents will one day appreciate me for who I am rather than what I can provide, I have given and sacrificed. But a major turning point was the recent increase in my parents' expectations to a nearly unbearable level. My parents had operated our family business, a little but cherished enterprise, for many years, and Frank had taken over. My parents loved the idea of Frank continuing the family heritage and often talked about how he was bringing it to the next level, but Frank was leading the business to its demise. Poor management, reckless spending, and numerous mistakes had left the company in financial ruin, and they looked to me as the reliable individual who could save it. A few days before my wedding, my mother gave me the name Linda. She answered without a hint of doubt, "We need you to help us. Your brother's business is in danger, and he needs some assistance to get it back on track." My stomach turned at this. I was finally planning for myself, my future, and my happiness. My wedding was only a few days away, and my mother was asking me to spend all of my money to correct Frank's mistakes. "Mom," I replied, trying to talk steadily. "I've always been available to help, but I can't salvage the business. I must think about my future." There was silence on the other end of the phone. "So you're just going to abandon us after everything we've done for you? You're going to walk away," she remarked in a cold, stern tone. I took a deep breath. I will not abandon any mother. I'm prioritizing my life for once. Since I'm getting married, I can't afford to take any chances. Her voice grew piercing, but I held it. "Linda, here, money isn't the sole consideration. It's related to family. You and your father have always been there for me. Frank needs you, and if you don't take immediate action, this business may fail." My heart started to race as I realized how high their expectations were. My dreams seemed unimportant, and my life purpose was to serve them and Frank. "I can't, Mom," I answered firmly. "I've given you so much. Frank must take responsibility." She hung up without saying anything more, and I could tell by the quiet how deeply unhappy she was. The day after, I was at my apartment reviewing the final details of the wedding when I heard a loud knock on my door. When I opened it, my mother was there. Anger twisted her features. "You're here, but why?" I asked. Startled to see me, she shoved her way in and barely glanced at me. "How did you get the spit out? How could you leave us when we most needed you?" I stepped back, startled by the anger in her eyes. "I'm not leaving anyone behind, Mom, but I've complied with all of your requirements. I've given you over half of my monthly salary, and I'm getting married in a few days. I can't let Frank's mistakes spoil my future." Her eyes narrowed, and before I could reply, she raised her hand and slapped me hard across the face. I was unable to talk since it was so shocking. "You're not allowed to talk to me like that," she shouted. "You repay us for everything we have done for you in this way. Do you not follow my instructions? Linda, you mean the world to this family." The smack burned my cheek, but my heart hurt more. I realized that now I was nothing more than a provider for them. I made a lot of sacrifices, but it was never enough. My sacrifices, my love, and my support. It wouldn't matter, because they never gave a damn about me. As I took my first breath, I forced myself not to cry. Mom, I can't continue to choose the happiness of others over my own. I love you, but I'm not going to let you control my life anymore. With her arms crossed perfectly, she growled, "Don't expect us to support you. When you come crawling back, you're making a huge mistake. Linda, when your selfishness gets the better of you, don't rush to us." Her remarks were intended to be harsh, but for the first time, I didn't feel the hurt. Instead, I felt strangely free, as though a weight had been taken off my shoulders. I didn't need her approval or confirmation. I had finally taken control of my life after my mother had stormed out. I said nothing, allowing the shock of what had just happened to overwhelm me. My cheeks had been jolted by the slap, but that was nothing compared to the realization that struck me. I've always tried to be the perfect daughter, the reliable one, the one who supports me both financially and emotionally. But in their eyes, I was only a tool at all times. That evening, to help with some last-minute wedding preparations, Daniel dropped by. As soon as he saw my face, he knew something wasn't right. He came over gently and held my cheek as he examined the redness. "Lindo, what happened?" I tried to stay calm, but my voice trembled as I explained everything. My mother slapped me when she got there. She demanded that I spend my savings to keep the family business afloat just before our wedding. Daniel's expression darkened with anger, and his hands tightened as he pulled me into an embrace. "Linda, you're not deserving of this. You've given them everything so they can't keep asking for more without giving anything in return." I know I talked in a barely audible whisper, but it's hard. Making them proud and trustworthy has been my life's work. It appears that support has only ever thought of me as a source of funding. Daniel told me, "You're more than just their support," in a kind but firm manner. "Linda, you have dreams, and those dreams are significant. I don't want you to feel guilty about choosing yourself this time." Those simple yet powerful words struck a chord with me for the first time in a long time. I felt as if someone truly understood me and saw me for who I am. Daniel was not merely my friend. The only person who stood by me was himself. We talked about our wedding, our plans, and, for the first time, us for the rest of the evening. I felt as though I was going forward without looking back. In the days leading up to the wedding, my mother kept messaging me. Each text message, voicemail, and email that arrived was more heated than the last. "Linda, you're making a grave error." They read one message: "If this wedding doesn't work out, we won't be around to welcome you again. You're putting yourself before everyone else, and your family is your first concern." I deleted the texts and didn't respond. She attempted to instill feelings of guilt and shame in me, but it was unsuccessful. I knew that choosing myself wasn't selfish. I was finally permitting myself to live a life devoid of outside influences. After learning about the argument with my dad, my Aunt Julia called the night before the wedding to check on me. "Linda," gently, she said, "even if your mother has been saying some hurtful things, I want you to know that you're acting morally. You have given this family more than enough, therefore, you should be delighted." I got a lump in my throat. Aunt Julia was always one of the few family members who cared about me for who I was, not her abilities. "Thank you, Aunt Julia," I whispered in a passionate voice. It's difficult to let go of everything I've been doing for them. I'm always wondering if this is the wrong choice for me. "You're not." When she responded, "You're just choosing yourself at last, and there's nothing wrong with that." With Daniel's assistance, I felt a little lighter. I was ready for my nuptials. I knew I was stepping into a future I had decided upon. I felt more at ease getting ready on the morning of the wedding. The typical anxiety I had during family gatherings was replaced with a quiet determination. I had chosen this new chapter in my life, and Daniel and I were enjoying it. When I looked in the mirror, I was dressed in my gown. I felt like I was finally looking at myself without the pressure of my family's expectations. Daniel's family and a few of my closest friends were present to cheer us on and show their support. Additionally, there was Aunt Julia, a comforting person who had been a rock during these difficult times. When I walked down the aisle and saw Daniel waiting for me, his face lit up with joy and contentment. It was an expression of "I see you." Linda, the true you. At that moment, I understood that all of the hardship, sacrifice, and loss I had experienced had led me to this state of pure happiness and liberation. We vowed to help each other in ways I had never experienced before. Daniel talked about supporting me, motivating me to go toward my objectives, and valuing me for who I am rather than just what I can do. Those remarks relieved years of agony about feeling unheard and undervalued. After the ceremony, we went to a modest reception with just a few close friends and relatives. It was simple and intimate, full of genuine joy, laughter, and love. There were no pretenses or presumptions about what I owed other people. For the first time, I had the impression that everyone around me valued me for who I was, not because of the help I provided. After the reception, I felt a sense of peace that I had never known before. I realized that Frank had chosen to avoid contact with my parents. I had decided that I was going to start a life that was mine alone, with people who truly cared about me. In the days following the nuptials, Daniel and I packed up and moved to Austin because we were eager to start over somewhere where we could build our lives without having to worry about my family's expectations. The shift did provide some challenges, though. We moved into our new apartment just a few days ago. I had received another email from my mother. It was forthright, accusatory, and nasty. Your family is no longer with you. You prioritized yourself over us. If something goes wrong, don't rely on us to help. Despite the pain, I read the lines with a newfound sense of strength. I knew these were the same duplicitous techniques I'd come across all my life, the same phrases of guilt meant to enslave me again. But this time, I didn't feel the same attraction. Instead, I knew I had made the right choice, and I felt a silent strength. Daniel saw the change in me and wrapped his arm around me one evening as we sat on our balcony overlooking the Austin cityscape. His words, "I'm proud of you, Linda," went on. "I know it hasn't been easy, but you've come a long way. You're over all of that now." His comments were direct, yet they gave me a sense of accomplishment. I had no idea that I was craving. For years, I've been under continual pressure to be the perfect daughter and a staunch ally of my family. Here, however, I could finally breathe and live for myself. Living with Daniel looked to be all I could have ever dreamed of as the weeks turned into months. We talked about our objectives, our dreams, and our hopes of starting a family in the future. We lived a simple life, but it was ours, free from the toxic cycle. I had been trapped in it for so long. One afternoon, I received a call from my cousin Adam. He had heard about all that had happened and wanted to contact Linda. His words were, "I just wanted to apologize." His voice carried genuine remorse. "I don't understand why they treated you that way. You've always deserved better." When I heard those words, a knot formed in my throat. I didn't expect an apology, but the fact that someone in my family understood my struggles meant more to me than words could express. "It's been hard, Adam," I murmured. Nevertheless, I now feel liberated. Adam's comments reminded me that my parents were loved even though I had severed my relationship with them. For the upcoming months, Aunt Julia had always supported me, and I began to rebuild our relationship. Uncle Jacob, some relatives, and close acquaintances. They saw me as a person, not just a talent. However, my connection with my parents remained tight. I couldn't forget how they had put Frank before me, the years of manipulation, or the smack. Every time I thought about reaching out, I remembered the pain, the endless sacrifices, and the fact that my value was derived entirely from my contributions. I accepted that my life would be better off without their influence and felt in my heart that I couldn't repeat that cycle. One day, months after the wedding, I received a final note from my mother. It was simple, almost desperate. "We miss you. Linda, give me a call." I stared at the screen without flinching, feeling the familiar tug of guilt. After evaluating the life Daniel and I had built together, the freedom and peace I had so desperately sought, I knew what to do. I responded with a brief but firm message. "I am pleased with the life I have built. I can never go back in time. I have to continue even if I hit the submit button." I had a wave of closure. I was finally free of the obligations and expectations that had weighed me down for so long. I looked at Daniel and the life we were building, and for the first time in my life, I felt totally free.